Welcome back to Paradise, Louisiana. And Gary, whitewater fishing in South Louisiana. People hear that and they're thinking, is it a rapid someplace, a creek running over rocks? Is that? No, no, no. This is in the intercoastal waterway. Just a little bit from the Green Bridge, as they call it. It's the Paris Road Bridge that takes you from New Orleans down to St. Bernard and Chalmette.
You remember when we went to Costache? That's what I was thinking of when you saw them coming over them rocks. And
right.
I thought maybe you was waiting.
Well, this is a unique situation where there are some pipes that go across the levee, and it's drainage pipes. There's a pump that's pumping water into the intercoastal waterway. One of the last places I would stop to think that there's going to be fish. You think of cold, dirty water coming across fresh water into a saltwater environment. Well, it happened to be loaded with fish. I'm talking speckled trout, redfish, flounder, hybrid striped bass. And it seems like if you looked on the depth finder, what would happen, there's a scouring that takes place from that water coming out of there with all this force, kind of digs out a hole. Those fish are laying down in that hole, and all this bait and white water moving across the top. It's like a smorgasbord.
Where did hybrids come from?
They might have came through the pipe, but there's been a run on those fish now for the last couple of years.
Well, you know, a lot of times we have river stripers. You down in Venice, you can catch both. Yeah. Because a lot of times I remember around in Golden Meadow, and then farms had them, you know, the hurricane bust them up, and a lot of them released. So they've got hybrids all over the estuary of the Mississippi River now, so I guess that's where they come from.
Well, they seem to be able to survive. They do pretty well in that slightly brackish water, I guess better so than any other freshwater species, but there's been a few bass. I've caught bass right there by the hot water canal, so there's kind of a mixing in there. But the key was the pumps had to be on. Mike Gallo had done some scouting. He picked up some fish there the day before, and because of the conditions with the high winds, that was one of the few spots we had as an option. Ran to it. As luck would have it, the pump was on when we got there. Like the second cast I made, I caught a speck. Then he caught a speck and flounder and speck, and it was on from there on. As soon as that pump shut down, the fish shut down. It was amazing. It was like turning the switch off, not on the pump, but on the fish. So we made a run, fished around the Great Wall of Chalmette, pecked out a couple of fish there in the windy conditions, came back and found those pumps back on again. It seems like they run for about an hour at a time, and they might stay off for an hour and come back on again. I don't know, the Sewage and Water Board dictates when those pumps are on, but if you can tell, you'll spot them probably a half a mile away. You can see that white water coming through. And you know,
I suggest, too, that a lot of times we had a prediction of that week. If you had predictions of rain coming, they start lowering the water on one side to get the other, and that predicates what they're going to do.
Well, we also tried a spot called the Michoud Canal. A lot of you know where that is. Bow Brothers Canal. It's a deep canal with a rocky edge on it. We picked up some fish there. And Mike Gallo's going to show you how we rigged up. Now, we had no live bait. We had no dead bait. It was strictly on play. And he'll show you his rig. He calls it the Drop Deadly Dudley. We'll take you there now. Captain Mike Gallo, Angling Adventures of Louisiana, doing whitewater fishing in South Louisiana. Nice speckled trout coming in right here off the intercoastal rapids.
I think the water going through the pipes creates a lot of current, and that forces the bait fish along, and the predators can obviously sit in the current, not have to have as much trouble dealing with the current, and it just sets up a good ambush point for those fish to ambush bait being forced to it. I make a drop shot rig with a Deadly Dudley hanging off of it. The one-out sinker will bring me down to the bottom, and this one will just sit in the current. When the fish tugs it, it's directly in line with my rod tip where I can feel what's going on. It works very well in high current areas. We moved around quite a bit through that outflow looking for a hot spot, which we never did find, but we were casting into the current and letting our bait sweep along with the current so that it looks as natural as possible as the other bait that's being forced along with that water. These are man-made canals, so they have some dedicated drop-offs where they've been dug. and you can ease along with your trolling motor and cast to the shoreline, very much like a bass fisherman would do. And when you find a spot where you catch a few, just work it over as best you can until it plays out, and then continue moving. We're in April, it's a transition month, so you'll have to move with the fish. I would think this would last until possibly mid-May, and those trout are going to be migrating out into the open waters looking to spawn. The redfish will stay here. Your drum, your flounder, and your sheephead, they'll stay because of those rocks. They feed on the barnacles that like to get up around those rocks.
Flounder. Thought it felt a little different. Oh, yeah. Is he a red?
I think so. Look at that.
Fat one.
Put him in the nose.
Now that is a hybrid bass, cross between a white bass and a striper, called a hybrid. You can tell by those broken lines. No size limit on the hybrids, but there is a 5-fish limit.
Intercoastal will have a variety of fish. This time of year, I would expect mostly speckled trout, some redfish, flounder like we caught today. We caught the striped bass or the hybrid bass. There'll be black drum and sheephead if you're fishing with market bait down on the bottom, or if live bait becomes available later on in the month, all of those species will bite the live shrimp.
There's a nice speckled trout. All right, so to catch these specks in the intercoastal, look for those pipes and make sure they're turned on, and you'll do some whitewater speckled trout fishing.